Hey guys, I'm Andy and this is Paul.
Yes.
We have put together basically a startup that we put together maybe 2 months ago. I think Paul looked into Ember probably at the beginning of us starting the startup. So we're not experts. This is just us, maybe telling you our little journey from where we started to a point where we actually finished the app that we're trying to market and sell at present, only in 3 to 4 weeks. So it's a really, it was a pretty tough learning curve for us, but it was also pretty rewarding as well. There's no way that we could have done what we did without Ember. So I don't know. I've never really been an evangelist for any kind of technology, but I reckon this is pretty great.
I guess we'll jump straight in then. So introduced us already. And this is the app we've created. So it's about business knowledge and process sort of combining the two. And ember.js, it's a framework for ambitious web applications. So it's all about building one-page apps, and it's similar to Angular and Backbone. It uses the model view controller concept. And it's open source, community-driven, like many projects out there. It's actually a product which was created by Apple and has sort of evolved now over the years.
The best thing about Ember is speed. Like 3 weeks to go from nothing to plus learning all the tech, plus all of this, basically till the point where it's online and we're charging for it. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and it's so amazing and fast because everything is by convention of configuration. So it has very clear guidelines how to set things up, like the router, different views, like the naming needs to match exactly the way they've set it up. So it makes it really easy if you have multiple developers because you know exactly what everything is named from, because it has to be named a certain way. And there's some really great tools like the Ember run loop, Ember data, and the templating, which make it really fast as well.
So you better talk about 1 minute about each of these things. So the run loop is like, imagine if there was just a timer, like going tick, 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 a bit like what ePOL or how Node.js kind of works. Ember run loop is like that, but on a client. And so what you can do is you can kind of schedule processes in, and you can basically hook into particular events. And then what it does is it tries to take things that might be run in parallel and kind of arrange them sequentially. So you can basically feed it events, and then it will do what it can when it can. It's a bit like what Node does. But this is on the client side, which is pretty cool. Ember data is pretty amazing. You can create an app which talks to a REST, service, and then you can potentially mix it with local storage, so like IndexedDB or with some other kind of local storage, or you can write your own custom adapter. You can then take the entire app offline if you want, which is pretty incredible. And then that's a one-line addition to your code. So if you wanted to basically say, download me everything from this REST server, and then cache it, and then take it with me on my PhoneGap mobile app, which I've converted, it means you can do all of that with one line, which is incredible. So, well, I think it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're going to get into more detail as well there. Yeah. But yeah, just sort of the quick features, it's got computed properties, observable arrays, lots of bindings, easy ways to create objects. So really clear ones, object.create, object.extend. So sort of what I was talking about before, but really clear.
Because it's in the convention, it's like, all these things you might be doing manually, you're handled by one-liners basically. So if you're not interested in the detail and you want to get things done quickly, it's pretty great.
And yeah, just another few common sort of good things about Ember.
The console's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we've got a few screenshots as well. But yeah, we'll make the slides available online. The next slide is going to be lots of code. Just get ready.
We don't want to go through this now.
But this is like the whole app, the to-do MVC, the whole app just in this amount of code. So including creating to-dos, removing to-dos, the actual template itself of the loop, each loop up there, everything is on screen. So it's really, really short as well. So yeah, these are some of the features we've used in our app and we thought they're really amazing. So we're going to go into detail now. So Ember data, is a way where we cage all of our results, all of our API calls sort of locally. And that includes, for example, here we've got the search shown, and all these results are caged here, and we can view, the details of the search results. And if we redo the same search, it won't go to the server, but instead we'll go to the cage, look up what's in that cage, and it's nice having sort of the Chrome inspector as well, to really view what all these elements are.
So you can download a tool from basically a Chrome extension. I don't know how many of you guys use Chrome, but it kind of plugs in. It tells you exactly what's going on. I don't know whether you've used promises or anything like that in Angular, but the same kind of thing that you might have in Angular, you have in Ember as well. So you can see what promises are being executed, what's being fulfilled. Sorry?
Extension's also available.
Oh, really? Okay, great. I didn't know that. That's good.
And yeah, the REST adapter. So here's a really specific example. So this.store.find will use the convention Ember has, and it will go to this URL, my workflows, because it is a .find, and it will sort of request an API call automatically. This is a standard definition. So literally using one line, it goes and makes a workflow, stores and cages it, and because it's with that convention, the guys on the back end know exactly how to set it up as well.
So we didn't create a name, like we didn't create a function saying my workflow is, this, I didn't create something on the server. Basically, the detail here, which is the convention or the pattern, is that you just create that my workflow, and then like by necessity, you need to create a service on the server called my workflows. Does that kind of make sense? So if you stick with a pattern, you stick with basically everything is streamlined. So then there's no option for a coder, if we ended up getting this outsourced, in the future, there's no option for some guy to go, oh, my favorite workflows, my best workflows, these are the parameters, these are the query params that I'm checking into my service. All of that's handled, and you're forced to actually do how they want you to do it, which is good and bad. It's a double-edged sword, but we reckon it's mostly good.
Because it stops arguing as well, Because Andy Maniga's the back end, like, you should put it this way, but he has to do it this way because that's what Ember says. So we don't argue about it.
But that said, you can still customize it. So like we've got custom serialization stuff in our app.
So just a quick query param example. So this is our app itself. So we've loaded a certain view using query params, and something like this might be really difficult to set up. So loaded like tags, position on the map, what elements we showed, animation settings, and it did all that really, really easily. Just by literally saying query params and what variables you want to have in the query params. And then you've got the default set up here, so the graph by default is shown, files are shown, but since we've set it to false, so it only puts it to the query params if it's not the default value. So you've got really nice short URLs by default, but also you can have anything in this. So we have the map position with the full 4 coordinates in there, serialized literally by just defining them here into what you want to have in the query params.
So one line allows you to then link, whatever content to whatever in your app. So yeah, here we're using it for a search string, but you could save your entire state using one line.
Yeah, it's probably a bit confusing, but the whole thing is like it's complete binary from the URL to what's shown on the screen. It's completely binary. If you change the URL, it'll change the view. There's also lots of stuff in Ember to make web components, and they try and make it similar to web component specification coming out soon. And it was really useful, for example, for TinyMC, which we use all over the place. So all we have to do, we set up a component, which I've got a list here, if you're interested, and we sort of inject a model, and then whatever changes in TinyMC gets back, and sort of just bind it 2 ways. And same thing for buttons, we can make nice reusable buttons, and we use Ember UI interface toolkit, which has been really useful.
And the curly braces are that's called handlebars for anybody who hasn't used that templating language before.
Ember UI is a third party.
It's a third-party component, like free component library for Ember. They're some pretty sexy buttons and stuff. So.
And yeah, back to the run loop again. So it just brings asynchronous execution and scheduling to JavaScript. It's based off another library called BrisJS, which is sort of extended a little bit, and it's used internally for the bindings as well. So, you know, if you're updating a value multiple times, it only updates the HTML once, just a sort of optimization. And yeah, that handles all actions, events, DOM rendering, and it's really useful for developers as well because you don't need to use callbacks and all that stuff. You can just sort of put that into the run loop. It will schedule it when it's ready. But yeah, it's a pretty complicated advanced subject, so it's got its own talk.
Okay, we wanted to talk about what we thought was bad about Ember 2, so we don't look like complete muppets. And you might think that the list is actually pretty large, considering that there are 2 pages. We probably spent quite a while telling you how good it is. But there are definitely some bad things. It is really, really, really new. Like we had to turn features on that weren't meant to be turned on, and just to make things work. But we were using really advanced features, so I think a lot of that's been fixed since. So this is how quickly the community is actually working. Like with the query params part of Ember, which is the integration or binding between the URLs and the content. That was only an advanced feature of like a month or 2 ago.
Yeah, it was in the Edge build, and you had to use custom flags to enable it. Now it's in the beta, still not in the full release, but it's been taking years. A year ago, they were gonna push that feature out, and still not out. So it's like, oh. Same with Ember data. Yeah. Since a year, they've been talking about making it a final release, and so the problem which comes with that is that the API constantly changes. Like literally, if you look up code examples from 3 months, they might not work. Like not exaggerating. It's just moving so fast.
So there were a few other small things. Like these, they might look big, but they're really small. We had to spend some the time for each of these are a couple of hours to half a day max. But they were annoying at the time. So there might be things that people, if you were using Angular, you might come to expect. But the amount of time that we saved doing all of the other things using Ember, So that's perfect.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll have to get you back for an advanced talk if you guys are willing to do that. I guess it's basically time.
Any quick questions?
Yeah.
How does
Ask
one break the
questions.
run if you had it on the top of your last slide?
Yeah. You can do lots of things actually. If for example you've got some if you've stuffed up even just a line of code in JavaScript just generally, it'll potentially break the run loop.
So things that just won't be updating, that's when you need one break.
No, the entire app won't load. So for example, it's kind of like a binary, on or off. If the app decides to load and everything's all perfect, basically your code has to be 100%.
That's a good thing because then once you fix that, it's all sweet.
It is. Yeah. Like it kind of keeps you on your toes, which is great. So yeah.
You guys happen to be using MCI or anything like that?
Nah. It's all really in one big JavaScript file actually.
It's because of me, because I'm like a mostly Windows developer, and I couldn't deal with requiring nodes. So
I was like,
yeah.
What are you doing for tests?
The test.
User testing. Our position on that is we're a young startup. We want to go as quickly as possible. Like it took us 3 weeks to build it, and we're starting to test it. We're in the process of testing. So,
but yeah, I think the default boilerplate comes with tests, so it's something which is encouraged in the community.
And even all of the binding, they've got I think that's one of the differences between Angular and Ember is that there are pretty much unit tests built into every single part of Ember. So you can just hook it up to automated testing if you need to. Probably a lot easier than what you can with Angular, from what I've been told, but I'm not Angular expert. Yeah.
Why should I use it over Angular?
That's a good point. We should talk about that in another topic. I'm not an expert at Angular.
I think there are lots of like minor sort of differences, but really on the big picture, it's just one's like complete framework with conventions, which is Ember. So like everything's set out to do exactly a certain way. Whereas Angular gives the developer a little bit more flexibility, which some people like and others like.
Particularly as we grow, I think when we get teams of people, hopefully, one day in, if there's only one way of doing things, you know, by you just creating a route, you've actually named all of your controllers. If you're forcing to use the same model nomenclature, you're forcing to use the same server style, like everything is just kind of, it forces best practice a lot, like basically across the development, particularly on the front end. So there are things that I wish that I had on the back end, which made me do that. But there is nothing for me on the back end. So yeah, it's interesting.
How does it work with jQuery, or did you have to use Twitter Bootstrap or some
Yeah, so you can use jQuery with Ember,
Okay.
but it is a little bit tricky. So you need to like hook into the Ember run loop. So you gotta wait till all the events are rendered on the page for the templating. But yeah, it is fine. Like TinyMCA is set up using the jQuery plugin. Like you can make it work for sure.
And
Yeah,
there's,
but I know something like Angular, that's a special Twitter Bootstrap, the layout framework that's all been rewritten in Angular style.
Oh, okay. I know. I've seen that.
There is an Ember bootstrap. Yeah, big community down there build it.
Yeah, I've used the Ember Bootstrap, but for me personally, it worked a few times. It wasn't very like.
I think it's because they're like changing and they try
Yeah.
to make it local components and they've been rewriting it. But I haven't personally.
It has like a warning in the actual repository. It's not quite ready. A lot of things in Ember.
but we use Bootstrap 3, so like it didn't take us any time to put it together. But we've got dynamic changes to Bootstrap while as you go through the app. So you can just manually just play with it. It's not a huge amount of work.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.